What?
Hey everybody, it's Friday and you are on the WordPress Friday Hangout for July. Summer. It's 1,000,000,000 degrees out. What's up, Victor? How you doing over there?
Billion trillion degrees. I'm in my air-conditioned apartment after just having walked my dog on lava land and
Oof.
trying to find any shady spot where he would not burn his little feet and be
I was
able
gonna say,
to
do you have the
go
little
and do his
booties?
business.
Do you do the little doggy shoes to protect their
He'll put them
pads?
on in the
Or
winter because he likes the heat. Like he likes the heat for a second, and then he like jumps and runs and then goes to the next spot. And like because he likes that heat. But the booties, it's funny when he walks in it. I think he gets it because the snow. He doesn't want to be wet. But like
Mhm.
I don't think the heat. He's like, I don't. Why do I have this? I can just run.
Man, it is no joke out there. I've been just came back from vacation that past couple of weeks, and so this week I'm trying to get back into my normal routine and back in the gym, and the gym workouts are just destroying me with the heat. I'm not acclimated, right? Like, so it's just like brutal. A
And you're in a
workout,
big box gym. I mean, like you're in like one of those
yeah,
big
but I do
box
CrossFit. We're
rooms.
basically like
Yeah.
a glorified
Uh,
warehouse, so there's no air
yeah.
conditioning. So by, the rest of my evening shot, I'm like just dying the rest of the day. So I got to like figure out some better vitamins or hydration techniques or something. It's just so brutal, but you still want to get out there and do some stuff, but definitely got to be careful
I
out there. There's
moved
a lot
my
of,
I moved my workouts to the night because I have the rowing machine at home, and then I go to a gym and like hit the weights. But even with like the rowing, like I'm like one of those people. Even no matter how, and I have an identical twin, and he's like a Marine, and like he's super fit, and he even told me like no matter how fit like we get, like we're just those people that sweat for like 15 minutes after a workout. So
I'm
if I
similar.
row and then I want to like sit at my desk, it takes like longer to cool down. So sometimes I cold shower, but then it's like then I have to dry and like wait. Like
Yeah.
it's just something I'm working out at night now, and it's so weird because I hate working out at night. But at
Yeah.
11 o'clock, it's you can work out, and I checked it out like with my doctor and like online, like you can work out up to 1 hour before bed. And so I'm like, so it's but at 11 o'clock at night, so it's so odd because my brain is like, dude, you're supposed to be chilling and sitting on the
Yeah.
couch and just enjoying getting
What's
ready
wrong
for
with
bed.
you?
Yeah, and now I'm trying to like lift heavy weights and row on my rowing
Oof,
machine.
that's
But
tough.
but it's the thing of like midday, I'm not dripping in sweat and like trying to like, and it
Yep.
psychs you out too because you're like on a call, and sometimes like not but clients are like at Sotheby's I'm internal, and I do like to show my face to like it's building camaraderie, and it's like you don't want to be like dripping and beating sweat and like giving the wrong impression, like
Right.
it's yeah,
Well, and you
it's
can get that workout
stressful.
brain sometimes when you really go hard.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to kind of get your brain reset, and like even calculating simple math can be difficult sometimes. So like it's hard to work out, like jump back right back into work or whatever. So I've
Well,
been doing more in the
it's funny you
mornings
say
and stuff
that.
because of it.
That's actually there's big conversations now. They've shown that thought workers like or people that work and that white collar blue collar because I don't like because there are now like thought workers that work in factories, but it's like people that work in offices in India. That's a big problem. They don't have air conditioning, and offices that have introduced air conditioning have found that like productivity goes up like when you're like under 75 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And so not just for knowledge workers, like there's people who are working in warehouses right now and they don't have air conditioning, and it was allowed for so long, and OSHA and housing laws are set up for cold. Like your landlord in New York City has to turn the heat on October 31st, right? But there are no laws that your landlord has to provide air conditioning. Your landlord cannot like it. And so even now, like there's offices where they're saying, like in UPS, that was what the strike was about. Air conditioning in trucks. They said, hey, we didn't need air conditioning in trucks before, but now with like, like changing climate and we're having more demand put on us, and like whatever, we need air conditioning. And so I think a lot of people are going to have to start modifying how they work. And there was an economist that was saying, hey, we might have to move office hours or like people working hours like from 9 to 5 to 6 to 2. And if you look in the Middle East, that's how they live. Like in the Middle East, everything shuts down from like noon to 5 p.m.
It's hot, man. And I've been there, and it's even hotter over there. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, if basically anyone in Europe that's listening knows that air conditioning is a privilege, not a right. Because if you've ever
Oh
visited
yeah.
Europe,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and ice cubes, you're not going to find either one. So,
Yeah.
but let's get into it, man. We got some interesting topics to talk about today. Hey, Lax, we see you in the chat room. If you're out there, jump in the chat, hang out with us. If you want to hop on the video here, we'd love to have you. Just shoot us a DM or say something in chat. We'll send you an invite. But it's a little lighter, a lot of vacations, so it's understandable. But This interesting article caught my eye, and it's pretty relatable to both of us for different reasons, and for some of the same reasons maybe. But speaking of WordPress and CMSs, open source versus for proprietary, Vox Media, Vox Media announced that they're actually going to drop their own proprietary CMS called Chorus in favor of WordPress, and this is a pretty big deal, honestly, because this is a big media company. They have their own proprietary platform, and this is one that they've actually licensed out to other media companies, right? So this is a revenue stream and a business for them, is their platform. And I've been up against, I remember going on CMS panels as the WordPress guy, being up against like Vox or Chorus, and kind of, basically promoting why WordPress is the best, or maybe a better setup. But the fact that they finally made the decision that, we're not going to continue down this road of proprietary, we're going to focus more on our core business and we're going to bring it over to WordPress is huge for WordPress. I really want to get your thoughts, because you come from kind of this big media world. You got a lot of experience. We've worked together in some of that, and I know you've done a lot more where we haven't worked together. But what's your take? Has WordPress officially won the CMS war when it comes to proprietary versus open source, or is this just
no? So I ended up having a pretty deep conversation with like some of my friends, and so it's funny, and I do want to like preface this for anyone like listening to this or listening to this in past tense. I don't really work professionally day to day in WordPress anymore. WordPress is kind of like I use WordPress as, I guess, kind of the anchor for any conversation about anything else. And it's kind of annoying sometimes to people who like, why do you always use WordPress as a reference, right? So for example, e-commerce people, I'm like, hey, in WordPress, they have this by the default. And people are like, we're not talking about WordPress here. We're talking about this new super duper e-commerce platform that we want to buy. And I'm like, well, listen, WordPress has, this built in, this built in, this built in. So you're telling me this super duper thing is awesome, but it's already there in like these open source things. So what are we paying for, right? And so when I do get brought in by private equity firms, VCs, to consult when there's acquisitions going on, they're doing due diligence, or, when they're starting a new project, they'll bring me in. And it's not just about CMSs anymore. Again, like I said, WordPress is where I started. But it's about evaluating software, build or buy, open source or proprietary. What are we going to use, right? And one of the things, in the conversation that I had about this when this article hit, one, I was laughing because this is how I see it, right? You have to think of the business model. It's not a surprise. Because Vox Media, right? I don't know what Vox is, like their main thing is publishing, right? And I forget who owns them now, because like there's so many acquisitions. Like aren't they part of like the people? They're also part of Gizmodo. I don't know if they like where are they, right? Are they part of Axios? And so I think there's so many mergers and acquisitions that go on that when those kind of things happen, it can derail any kind of progress going on with a proprietary CMS, right? Or if you get a whale client, right? Say that you're Vox CMS and you're like, hey, we have Vox, we have like these 5 other publications. And I don't know, let's say the Times came along and said, New York Times, and said, hey, we want to use your CMS. We're going to drop ours. Well, they're going to position themselves and all of a sudden start building for the New York Times, which might distract them from other things. And so it's not, whereas WordPress, right? And again, I don't want to get into the whole automatic versus WordPress thing, but like at least with WordPress, open source contributors can start to go in their own direction and keep the torch alive on other things, right? Whereas for a proprietary system, it's all led from the mothership, right? And if the mothership is being guided in different ways and has different things, it's not a surprise. And the other thing too, when I get people that say, well, this is a really exciting CMS that's made by Vox. Hey, this is a really exciting, it's made by so-and-so. Or hey, it's led by this. And I was trying, as you're speaking, I was also going to bring up, I've also been out, this whole big heat up happened in like 2018 because the Washington Post was purchased by Amazon. And if I remember correctly, they were open sourcing theirs and I can't even find it. Like I type in Amazon CMS and I can't. And so I don't even know if that's still around, right? And so all these proprietary CMSs, like they get a few big clients or they get a few big wins, like a Vox or a Times or a Post or whatever. And then they end up getting gobbled so much by it, but they forget how to grow. And again, they don't even have it where like the little people can use it. So there's a lot of reasons I could go into so much, but and the final thing is this, the ubiquity of it. What I would say to people with WordPress is throw a rock in Brooklyn and you're going to find someone that knows how to use it. You log someone into like any of these other CMSs. it's a learning curve, and it's like,
Yeah.
and they have to learn how to use those tools.
I mean, I think that's one of the biggest, in my mind, one of the biggest like disadvantages to anything proprietary like this is exactly what you just said, right? Like if you're on WordPress, if you're on Drupal, if you're on open source, there's people out there, there's companies, there's freelancers, there's meetups, there's, events centered around those platforms. It's easy to find people that are very, very good to work on, right? And you can go out there and find those experts that can come in and really help do whatever you need to do immediately. But if it's proprietary, nobody knows your platform except the people working on it. So any new hire that comes in, it's like they're learning almost like a whole new technology. It is a whole new technology and potentially a whole new language set. So like the overhead to maintain and continue to build and grow and to train your team and your staff and then to sell it to other people and they have to do the same, it seems like such a no-brainer to me that is a bad path to go down from a financial standpoint, like in just an overhead, the amount of overhead. So Vox is the parent company of some brands that some of us might be familiar with. The Verge is probably one of the more common ones around technology, but they have SB Nation and the New York Magazine, Polygon, a few other brands. So they're pretty big. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And, Aaron Jorban, big core dev committer, good friend of WordPress, tweeted out that with the news that Vox is moving to WordPress and Arc focusing less on media, I think the winner of Amazon this war, Arc. Yep. Amazon Arc, yeah. The winner of this war was WordPress. Always bet on open source. And I think that last statement, always bet on open source, really holds true. Because in the long, if it's a marathon, I think open source will always win. And I don't think it will be close. Open source is going to dominate proprietary.
And there's things that like open source does by default that I forget. And again, like in my job, like one of my big things I do now is help people decide on software, right? Whether it be, and it's kind of funny, like I'm kind of being like an armchair CTO for some of my friends' companies, my brother's company, because they're saying to me, should we use Google Workspace or should we use Teams? I'm like, I don't know, likewise, but that does matter because what does it integrate with? Like all these different systems. And so, and again, like I hate to keep, and I don't know, I feel weird. I find it funny because for the WordPress community, again, you guys, like, you get it. You know why I choose WordPress. But sometimes you're like, why does it always go back to WordPress? You didn't even look at the other tools. I'm like, I don't need to look at the other tools because they require a paid license for an Okta integration, which is another $100 per user. They require this. I'm like, whereas with WordPress, we have a G Suite integration and we can use Google Groups. And so if Google Groups is tied to our user, LDAP, then we can like, hey, someone's an editor, they're an editor in WordPress. We can tie those things together. And so that's like, thinking about just that, like, actually, this is one of my secrets that I use when choosing software. Go and think of a software that you need, right? So let's say social media sharing. You go and look at something like Buffer, right? Buffer, Hootsuite, any of those. All of those tools, they all add SSO, single sign-on, or any kind of premium two-factor authentication and security requires the most expensive license.
Which is ridiculous. That should be the bare minimum, right?
Brad knows this. And I don't know if this is like a reasoning of like that it's their maybe Okta and Auth0 charge a lot, but again, there's open source OAuth. So I think it's that they understand that, and people who want security want that, right? So the fact that WordPress, you can do SSO and like shared authentication for free and have unlimited users, that's a whole nother win. And so look at, and then another one is, we're looking at Webflow, right? Webflow as a CMS, that's how they make their money. And that's like, I think a lot of these SaaS companies are like, what's the killer feature that everyone wants? Oh, unlimited users. Well, let's charge for that, right? And so I think that's like, WordPress is like unlimited users. So I don't know, what was Arc? Was Arc charging by seat? Because if you think about charging by seat and as your newsroom scales, right? And as you have more people, more marketers, more whatever, now you're talking like, I don't know if it's $20 a seat. And that's why Jira starts to get terrible. Jira, most of the time now,
very quick. Yeah.
Yep. And because it's users and it's like for marketing teams, like, look, the marketing team doesn't know they just need an update. Let's use JQL and put it into a spreadsheet. And JQL is like a query language to pull out of Jira. And a lot of the stuff when I work with companies, it's like, how do we not pay for seats by using external APIs to just render what people need to see, right?
I hate paying for seat, man. I hate it. As a business owner, yeah. It's like everything now is like here's our cost per user per month. I'm like, why? Why can't I just have a flat rate? Why does it always have to be per user per month?
More than 10 editors, by the way, in Webflow, you have to contact sales. More than 10 editors.
That's not even that many.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically everything above and beyond what I would consider a small business would probably fall into that bucket of 10 or more, right? Like even medium
Right.
size and certainly up to enterprise,
Right.
way more than that. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting when people make some of these massive decisions. I don't know if it's executives up high and they have big grandeur of making $1 billion revenue streams and compete with other foundations, but it's just odd that these companies focus so much on that stuff. What really, that's not their business, like their business is the media side of it and actually pumping out media and content that people want to read and absorb. It just seems like, they took their eye off the ball in a sense, and now they're realizing that and getting back to where they should be focusing, which is their content, and what they're putting out there. Forget the platform, right? That's our goal when we build websites for most of our clients, but most all of our clients is you shouldn't have to worry about the platform. You should just focus on your business and the content that you want to get on your website. You should never have to worry about, could the platform do this or do that? Yes, it can. How can we help you?
It's
You just
interesting
need to
you say
focus on your
that.
business.
It reminds me of, so one of the things, and again, this is like super nerdy, high level business stuff. There was a movement in the 80s and 90s about core competencies. And so if anyone's not aware, the core competency business idea is that, hey, whatever your core competency or whatever you make money on, focus on that and distribute the rest, right? So if you are like these large, big companies, like it used to be that like a New York Times, I'm going to make this up, maybe they had an accounting department. Now they definitely do have an accounting department because they have to do payments receivable, accounts, like whatever, ad collection. But for like, let's say HR payroll, they usually source that out. That's like a lot of companies do, right? And that movement happened. That same thing happened in manufacturing. And so I guess this relates, and that's where Brad, I recently heard in manufacturing, so not Bed Bath & Beyond, that one closed, Bath & Body Works. Apparently Bath & Body Works had offshored all their production, and now they brought it all state US based, and they're able to turn around new fragrances in 24 hours. Now, like, what does that have to do with WordPress? But let's think about a CMS, right? The core competency model, which is what like a lot of these companies like are, hey, our core competency is news. Let's focus on this, or like, hey, like let's outsource this. And it's the same thing of like, you have to choose what to outsource. And I think something like a CMS is so huge, and there's so many other people that are leveling up, that if like, how can you as a small, and let's pretend you're like, even if you're a 10,000 person newsroom, you probably have 100 engineers tops, right? Let's say 100 engineers. You're going to have your 100 engineers who are also dealing with your ad tech, also dealing with like custom design, custom products, whatever, also build the CMS. Whereas something like, if you start to think about that, these companies, they could just focus on their website, use something headless, right? Like a headless Next.js or one of these things, and then let the CMS be outsourced, right? And so that's what, I look for that story, like that is a recent story, by the way, about Bath and Body Works, because it was an interesting study about everyone is with the decoupling from China, and like with a lot of distribution issues, they need quick turns around. Because I don't know, I think they're Bath and Body Works, they pride themselves in having new fragrances, all these things rolling out. And so, for these companies, like Brad just said, your job is breaking news, getting new stories out, telling interesting stories. Okay, well, you're spending all this time trying to level up a CMS. Is that your core competency? So it's almost like they brought that in house when all they needed to do was bring it near house, right? And I don't know, like that's that terminology, but Bath and Body Works, they didn't bring it in house. They did not want to make their own fragrances, but they did realize they wanted to partner, and that there was something in there about how they incentivized those partners to move near shore and like all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's the thing. If you look at CMSs, every single time that these companies go and do it, they go and make their own, and they try to, and they're not thinking about how to distribute it. So I think we need to maybe look at those models as well, like, because it always fails. Like I've not seen a successful CMS, that was owned by a big media company that worked.
Well, now, if you think about it, you mentioned like engineers within newsrooms and stuff that have been focusing on these proprietary platforms. Now, if they were able to kind of pivot, and they will, they'll have to, right? Because they're going to WordPress. So they're going to have engineers that are working on WordPress. Now, if they could start bringing that, amazing engineer newsroom, mindset and really talented group of people to help contribute to open source, contribute to WordPress, build out the tools they need, but open source them, right? Hopefully, so that we can all benefit from it and continue to help grow those things. I know Matt had the big initiative. Was it Newspress? I think it was called. I think it's still out there, but I just don't hear that.
Newspack.
Newspack. Sorry, that was like WordPress powered news sharing revenue ad system. I didn't fully understand the whole thing, but like imagine you had, Amazon and like Vox and some of these massive media companies, News Corp or whatever, and they all said, you know what, let's go in on WordPress and let's start building out these enterprise media level tool set that we all need. Let's build them out together. What's that saying about tides rising, all ships or whatever? And I understand there's a lot of competition here, but damn, it's open source, right? So at the end of the day, if you're contributing to WordPress, it doesn't matter really where you're coming from. It could be a huge game changer for WordPress in the world of like large media, conglomerates.
Well, it's funny you say that because like that is a question, right? Like how and this is what's, again, another thing besides the licensing of SSOs, that's like the first thing I look for. Another thing I look for with software is if I Google that software name, can I find a screenshot of the admin, right? And if there's software, like one of the big ones right now is OneTrust. They actually stopped this, but OneTrust, which also owns Cookie Pro, which is like one of those privacy things, like allow all, disallow all. They used to have their documentation behind login. And that made me so angry, and so many other developers. And right now, I bet you if I'm like on a screen right now and I type Vox Chorus CMS, I'm not going to find screenshots, right? So imagine how hard it's going to be for whoever was on Vox to shop around for a vendor to migrate them, right?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. And do those docs exist? Does Vox still employ the engineers who built it, who can explain how to migrate it, right? And so that's like another thing. Like that's like, I'm looking, I can't find a screenshot of how the Vox CMS functions. I can't find like any documentation on it. I see something about Ghost or something, like how it uses Ghost.
What? Ghost?
Yeah, like
the Ghost CMS platform.
Yeah, and then like, but yeah, and so it's so funny to me. It's funny, this article, and it's so funny because when this, I was really big into working with publishers when this first came out, Vox Chorus. And I'm seeing this article from Pointer. We researched 5 CMSs to kickstart your CMS transition. It's Art, Chorus, Ghost, Newspack, and News Project. Okay, so I was going to say they didn't include WordPress, but I guess Newspack is WordPress.com, but built on WordPress, technically, or whatever. But this was like, I don't know what Pointer. Maybe it's like a publisher, publication, but like, they don't have a date on this. But yeah, it's like it's funny to me. Like, I wonder how you migrate, and that's like a huge problem, right? Can you get in and out? And that's what I see.
Whenever I'm pitching a lead and we're kind of talking about WordPress and it's someone that isn't necessarily sold on WordPress or they're on something else and it's just one option, of course I'm pitching WordPress and, I'm going to say it's amazing because it is, but the one thing I tell them, I was like, no matter what you're looking at, the number one question you should ask is, how can I get my content out of this system if I decide to move down the road, right? And I'll be happy to walk you through how you can do that in WordPress today. Without any help, you can get your content out there, you can export it. Almost every system out there can import the WordPress, export, what is it, XRP file? Because WordPress is so massively adopted, like every system needs to be able to import that file in some way. So, and there's a lot of tools if it gets more complicated, and companies like ours if it gets more complicated. But, it's like that's the number one question, because I feel like on proprietary platforms, it's never a straight answer. How do I get, we could look at that and help you get that out. Well, no, how can I do that myself? Can I get my content out? Because if you can't answer that question or show me the process, then right there is, they're trying to lock you in, right? And then it turns into a situation where you almost can't leave. And now, to your point, how many newsrooms are sitting on this platform and probably saying, well, we got to get off of this thing. Vox is getting off of it. We got to get off of it. What's the plan? Where's the money coming from? Where's the budget? Well, what's this going to cost? How long have they been on the system? How much, what's the archive of data look like? So now there's this massive overhead cost that they could have avoided just going open source.
And what agencies can work on it. And that's something too, for a while, I was doing a lot of WordPress work on Upwork. And even though I was just doing really well with CMS work, and people would come to me and say, hey, we're on, and name any kind of like random craft this, that, and like, but we want on this CMS. And I would say to them, and this is actually something, and I just would say to everyone, if you think about this, like, look, I'll take a look, I'll give you some consultation, but I'm not going to bother learning to code in it. I'm not going to bother learning it. And no one that I work with is going to, and if it was a new project, I was like, because to let you know, I'm going to have to charge you an extra hour almost for every hour of work, because it's going to be like, how do we, like, let's say this, hey, it's a CPT in WordPress, Okay, I know that takes 10 hours. I'm going to have to say for this new proprietary CMS, I'm going to estimate at 20 hours because I don't even know if it's possible in the CMS. I don't know what the language is. I don't know like how that works. And so and I don't know how the data is modeled. I don't know if it, like how we do that. I don't know if it has this functionality because you're asking me to replicate what I already did in WordPress, right? And so a lot of those, and that's the thing too. What if a company, and I don't know how, any of Vox's relationships work with their publishers, but if there's like, hey, let's say you're ABC media company and you bought Vox Chorus and you have 3 developers in your team who know how to update Chorus for your team. And I don't know if Chorus allowed, developers on site for those individual companies to do anything. But let's say I'm like the front end developer for the Vox Chorus team at ABC Publisher. Now, if I get laid off after I only know Vox Chorus CMS, right? No one's using it. So that's like a dead skill, right? And so that's like with WordPress, like it's a forever skill, right? And that's something too, when I tell people like your developers, it gets harder to hire if you have a proprietary CMS, and it gets harder to find, for developers who take the job, and that's like people who worked in, I don't know, ASP or Power Builder, any of these things that die off. Like it's like you could find niche jobs, but it's not going to grow your career.
It's like Java, in a 5 or so years, being a Vox or a Chorus developer could be very lucrative because you'll be one of a handful
if you're maintaining dead systems.
It reminds me of like Java engineers like get paid crazy amount of money because there's just not that many out there, right? Like classic Java, And it's funny you mentioned ASP because I was classic ASP was my jam. My previous job before starting WebDev, that's all we built on. And it was for batteries.com. I think we've talked about that. Completely custom, website, e-commerce, everything was custom. But back then, that's how most people were doing it. Like WordPress was still blocked. Open source wasn't like it is today. So that was very acceptable. It was more about what languages do you know, not what platforms, right? What languages, classic ASP, .NET, PHP, C#, whatever. So, but now it's more about, okay, what languages and what platforms, right? Great, PHP, but do you know WordPress development with PHP or, WordPress development with React, right? Like there's that extra component of knowing WordPress along with the language. So,
but I do want to bring this up. I'm going through the Axios article about Vox Media Chorus shutting down. And it looks like Vox Media will move its own website off Chorus. Its own websites off Chorus into WordPress VIP, the enterprise arm of the 20-year-old CMS company. Okay.
It doesn't really I don't think it mentions all the other companies.
That's what I was just going to say.
I didn't see it mentioned unless I missed it.
So imagine now, and everyone's got that. Listen,
Vox isn't going to pay for that.
That's what I was just going to say. The emails you get when they're like, hey, so-and-so, you built your social media stuff on this. I remember when dashboards were like the hot startup for a while, like before Data Studio came in and just killed the dashboard thing. Like people were paying for dashboards, and the minute Data Studio came out, all the $20 a month dashboard companies quit, right? And I remember everyone in WordPress that was using those for like doing reporting was like, we've been abandoned. There's no migration strategy. Yeah, that's the one thing these companies don't plan for when they sell you. They don't so if and when we shut down, how do we handle getting people off this? No, they just go, hey guys, sucks to tell you, but we're closing up shop. You got 3 months to figure it out. That's what's going on here. And these companies, and don't get me wrong, this is good for WordPress VIP, I guess, because now everyone can go to WordPress VIP. But that's, that's going to piss off, a lot of people who are like, maybe they don't want to know WordPress, maybe they don't know WordPress, maybe and again, is WordPress VIP right for these companies? And, Vox Media, it's just, they might even just charge, say, hey, this is our migration partner. You don't like it, you got to go shop around.
Yeah. And I mean, WordPress VIP is a great fit. The question is, it's also a very specialized platform. We're a gold, WordPress VIP partner. We have a number of clients on WordPress VIP, so we understand that platform. And it is, it is unique in itself, and it is a great platform, especially for high scale media. I mean, it really is one of the best out there. So, but going over there again, yes, it's WordPress, but then there's also other layer of it's WordPress VIP. And that also means some different things from traditional just WordPress development and how deployments go and all that stuff. So it is a good thing for WordPress. It's definitely, it's a really good thing for WordPress. It's a great thing for WordPress VIP. But yeah, I think it begs that question. How many more media companies are out there running this Chorus software, and what are they doing? Is there a plan? Because, hey, I'll raise my hand. This is why when you get in these situations, there's not a lot of companies out there that could really specialize in this, really understanding WordPress inside and out, and also really understanding how to work with complex data coming out of any type of system, right? like that's what we do. There's other agencies like us that do that, but it is a specialized skill. Generally speaking, a smaller company isn't going to be able to handle something like that because it takes a lot of knowledge, a lot of just figuring out complex problems to move large sets of data out of any system, a custom system especially, and get it into WordPress the correct way. So maybe it'll be good for web dev. We'll see. I'm definitely gonna reach out to my VIP contacts and see if we can help. But it's an interesting landscape, and it's changing quickly. This has all kind of gone down in the past year-ish. It seems like post-pandemic things have shifted and changed. It seems like in the past year, Vox and now Amazon are starting to make some changes in what their core focus is for their companies. Obviously, Amazon's got a lot of core focuses, but in terms of ARC. That's ARC if you're curious.
And it's actually, I'll actually tweet it out. What's hilarious, it's not called ARC, and it's ARC XP, and it's trying to be a digital experience platform ecosystem, not a CMS for publishers.
And even in this article, it mentions the Washington Post, which is on ARC XP or whatever. They have partially transitioned off its own CMS and were forced to create a separate version of the CMS to power its own site. So they have a fork of their own proprietary CMS, it sounds like, internally within the same site. Can you imagine? It's almost like running two different versions of WordPress for the same site, it sounds like, and one's custom in a different way. And what is good? That doesn't sound good. Now, again, this is on Axios. Take it with a grain of salt. It's a media article, but that right there is kind of a big red flag, right? If you have to fork or split off your own proprietary CMS for your own website, something ain't right. Something's off.
I just tweeted that out with WP Friday. I just tweeted the documentation link for everyone if they want to check that out.
Yeah, WP Friday hashtag.
Yep.
Check it out. Well, speaking of big WordPress news, another thing caught my eye. NASA has launched their new beta website on WordPress. So if you go to beta.nasa.gov, you'll get to see the new website, really, really nice WordPress site. I think they announced this along with the launch of a new free NASA streaming service. And I haven't tested it yet, but the announcement said that the app is available on all major streaming platforms. So it sounds like if you have Apple or if you have you can add Google TV or something, or Roku, you can add the NASA app, and there is a streaming channel now. It's free because it's the government. It's not a paid service. And it's just it's a NASA channel. So I want to check that out. But this caught my eye because one, it's NASA, which is cool as shit. We know there's aliens now, which is also cool. And two,
get ready to fight us.
Yeah, and two, it's another massive government website that is on WordPress. Whitehouse.gov was the biggie, a few years ago when President Biden won, and they relaunched it on WordPress. Now, the new one is NASA, and it's on beta.nasa.gov, but obviously the plan is it will go, live at some point. So again, another really prominent government website that's going all in on WordPress. So, and government has always been an area that WordPress hasn't really had a big reach. It's in terms of open source, it's been predominantly Drupal. So I think this is another big feather for the WordPress's cap, if you will, that it's starting to seemingly open up more within the government sector. I'm glad they didn't go with Chorus. Too soon.
What else? What is else out there? What's so funny? Someone, I forget. I got to find the tweet because when I tweeted about it and I said, hey, this is I think I tweeted about the Vox Chorus thing and said, hey, interesting. And someone commented, a random person, or not random, someone on Twitter said, what about X? And what about X? And people always say, what about X? What about X? And I'm and when you look at it, that's not the guy linked, what did he link to? He goes, what do you think of this? And what he linked to was not even a CMS. Again, it's everything that people keep saying is the next CMS is a developer tool that has API endpoints. That's not a CMS. Do you know what I mean? A CM, and that's what I think is interesting about WordPress. It's a CMS out of the box. And don't get me wrong, it's ugly when you open it. There's a lot to pare away in WordPress, but at least you know where to go in it, right? Whereas before I was saying what's annoying about these proprietary tools is when you Google it, you can't see any screenshots or actually see it. But as a user, what stinks about these other, and I'm doing this air quote, great CMSs that developers love is that no non-developers can see how to use them. Like if I were like, let me put on my little marketing hat and I'm going to type in craft CMS, right? And when you go to it, when you go to the homepage, it's like, it has, when you go to learn more, it's all about like extending and selling and buying and like, like categories and tags. It's not, and it's more about like, it's almost like it's selling a page builder, right? Like and that's like where these tools are. Whereas like WordPress, you can fire it up and you're ready to go. Whereas all these tools, like it's Craft Console, plugin store, like hosting, support, like all this stuff. It's not very clear how it sits. Like with WordPress, you go and there's like a one-click install. The ecosystem exists to make it easy for everyone to figure it out. All these other CMSs, I can't think of anything that makes it that ubiquitous and that easy to spin up.
As you talk about some of these other platforms, it's interesting because WordPress, like, especially in the past few years with Gutenberg and block editor and patterns and FSE or whatever we're calling it now, like it's clearly going like we're at this ground when Gutenberg came out where it was like kind of a mix between, intuitive to use for like non-developers, but also developers get in there and do it as well. And now we've kind of just kept going towards this no code non-dev. So you can do beautiful landing pages and, posts and pages and CPTs or whatever using the block editor with no code, and what's great is we've gotten to the point now where when new leads walk in the door and talk to us, they're talking about that. They're like, hey, we really need a solution that doesn't involve code. And what they're talking about primarily mostly is from their perspectives, like WYSIWYG editors that, flip in between that and the raw HTML, which is basically what you had to do to get any type of a really well-crafted page to look good. That's what they're trying to get away from. So like WordPress has gone really far in that direction to compete with all the other platforms out there that have done it and are doing it. But it's interesting that you say there's these other platforms that are so dev focused. It's like the complete polar opposite of the direction the CMSs are all headed. And all these, even the like Squarespace and others have been for a while, so I don't know. I'm curious to see where it lands. I'm really happy with where, Gutenberg has come. It definitely was rough around the edges at the beginning, but now, we love it and our clients love it. And it's just a really powerful tool. So it makes selling WordPress honestly easier when we show them that,
There was actually, I don't know if you saw this, Brad, David Bissett. I've never had to say his last name aloud. David down from Florida side, Dimension Media on Twitter. He shared this article. If we don't start slowing down and marking the trail for developers, we'll begin hemorrhaging the very people who make WordPress great. I'm going to retweet this with the hashtag WP Friday. And so what the article was saying, because you were bringing up Gutenberg, was saying that like, hey, and it's a lot. It's actually, this was interesting to me. So one of the things that I would recommend to everyone, if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to learn WordPress, I want to learn Gutenberg, I would actually tell them to go to Tanya Mork's Learn the Code, because Tanya Mork has like these 2 great mini courses. Excuse me. And some people say these are too long, Victor. It's like 2 hours to set up my laptop. I'm like, look, it's 2 hours to set up your laptop because she's walking you through real development, setting up Git, setting up CLI, setting up all these things. But she just closed it. She just closed it for new people, right? And then, there's other people out there who were, big in the training space, big in the tutorial space. And even there's nowhere I can point someone to go for Gutenberg development training nose to tail. Like, hey, here's how CPTs work, here's how this works. And it used to be, Tanya Mork was up until FSE and Gutenberg. But I would say to people, hey, like, all this still matters. You need to know CPTs, you need to know like taxonomies, you need to know plugin APIs, all these different options pages. But now, with, again, the Gutenberg editor, FSE, all the new stuff, I don't know where, and people say point to the handbook, but it's so woefully out of date in WordPress. It's like, it's a big flux. And I thought this was a really interesting article. So it was saying like, hey, we need to slow down to catch everyone up, or people are not going to, developers aren't going to have a good experience. And I think that's the one edge that all these other CMSs have, that, and I don't know the way that the world, we can't predict the way the world is going, but if you have an engineering heavy organization and all those engineers have a bad time with WordPress and they don't have a guy like me or a Brad or, someone there who's like, well, hold on, guys, we know it's rough, but let me actually point you all here's this article, and puts it together. And that's what I've had to do at some companies where I'm like, yeah, okay, to get up on CPTs, you want the know the code is like how you're gonna set up your laptop, CPTs and stuff. Here's like this great course and article. Gutenberg, follow this guy, this guy, and like this person. And so it's like, it's kind of a mishmash. And so I wonder, like talking about, that is like the one chink in the armor I'm seeing for WordPress. It's that developers still hate it. And then the solutions are not, and I know someone in here is going to say, what about Sage and whatever those things are called? Those are not solutions. Those are developer tools, right? Those aren't solutions. And again, then I would say, okay, well, like now if you put Sage on it, how many developers can actually work on it? I'm talking about just the basics of WordPress, not Sage and whatever these makers
are. I remember years ago, one of my first interactions with Matt Mullenweg was, I think it was after I wrote the first edition of Professional WordPress, and I had never met him before, so I still was a little bit, starstruck and being a goober like that, So, but we were at some WordCamp, and I got the courage and going up to start talking to him a little bit and told him who I was and that I wrote this book, because it was all based on his blog post. He put out a call saying, "Hey, if anyone's interested," and I reached out to the lady, and next thing I knew, I'm writing a book. So I kind of explained to him, I was one of the ones that got that because of you.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I said, I was like, I'm really, and he asked me, like, do a lot of people still buy physical books, which is a question I still get. And I remember I said to him, I was like, yeah, they do. And I was like, one of the challenges is, I was like, and this was 2009 or 10. I was like, there's a lot of information all over the internet, and it's way better now around WordPress. There's a lot more, developer documents and stuff, but that wasn't the case back then. It was a codex, a wiki. It's all over the place. I was like, there's no concise place where I could say, here's everything you need to know, and this is the accurate way to do it. Right. And I remember telling Matt, I was like, the way I feel about it is, if developers can't figure out how to build on a platform, they're probably going to move on and find a platform that they can figure out much, much quicker. And if the documentation and the training is all over the place and they got to go hunt for it, and then they don't know if this one random blog post from a year ago is accurate or not, or they use a function that says it's deprecated and they're like confused, they might abandon it. And he adamantly disagreed with me. And I remember thinking, damn it, the first interaction with Matt, he's just like, no, I don't agree with that at all. And I was like, all right, well, but I actually still feel that way. And it's exactly what you're saying now. It's like, if we're not helping the developers figure out how to build on the platform, they're going to abandon it.
PHP, in my opinion, as a developer, is very forgiving, right? Because you just and it's like, and it's a bit, you get like, and then if you set up something like Kint and Whoops, you get these big alerts at the top, like whatever. JavaScript, the thing can just bonk, and you don't even know, is it, and now it's client side, server side, where is it? It's like, it's very confusing. And JavaScript, then it's like bringing in, okay, React, Redux, hooks, like, oh wait, there's hooks in React now. Oh wait, and there's hooks in WordPress. It's like, okay, because WordPress is the system, and it's not a library, right? Because and that's where it's not a library, it's not a framework, it's a full CMS, right? And that's like, I used to teach kids to code, and that was it. Like, what's a framework versus a library? And I would say WordPress is a full-fledged CMS. It's not just a library, it's not just a framework. But then you introduce all these other dependencies that are libraries and frameworks. And if you don't know them, it's very difficult to work in it. And then, WordPress uses its own version of Redux. Like it's like a lot to learn and know. And I think that's and again, it makes WordPress great because WordPress can do all those things. Right now, with a lot of like MarTech stuff, I'm actually winning a lot of people with WordPress because they're like, oh, everything's moving server side because the new privacy tools in Apple. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, you use WordPress already, so we can just move it on the PHP side. If they're on like some kind of, front client side, like rendering thing only, I'm like, I don't know what to do here, right?
Yeah.
But I know those two languages in WordPress. But then when I'm having to talk to developers who only know one side or they only know this tool, it's hard for them to understand. So I wonder, like, maybe that's why when they come to WordPress, it's so overwhelming because it's doing everything, right? And I think, and that's the other thing too, like we don't have on the WordPress training, like a simple tutorial of here's how to edit a plugin. Like here's how to, or not edit an existing plugin, but like, here's how to make a quick code change. Here's how to do this. And the one thing too, and I'll say that we do in WordPress, we don't even let the baby developers joining because like we don't use local by Flywheel, which I get, but we're expecting everyone to use Docker. Is that still, I forget, like we're expecting everyone to spin up Docker and use all these things to contribute.
Docker, local is the biggie too.
But we don't know, I don't think in the documentation of WordPress.org, we encourage local. We encourage Docker and all these.
Probably not, because it's essentially owned by a hosting company, right?
But then the complication with that is you can get, again, like baby developers, you can bring them into like a console and have them fire up a site and serve it locally via one command. Like, hey, create React app, go to the URL, you made that, right? Wow, one command line, you spun up that. We don't have that in WordPress. And then with contributing, it's even more insane because it's like, I have to learn Docker. Like, what do you mean? I run React to my computer with one command line, right? And I think that's like with also the overhead that WordPress has, which I'm surprised that, that Matt says that. I can even speak as a more advanced developer. I'm like, oh my God, I have to put Docker on my computer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, the barrier to entry in terms of WordPress development is very high considering where it was a decade ago. To your point about PHP being a pretty forgivable language, you can dive in, you can start hacking away at it. That's how I learned WordPress. I started hacking away at Hello Dolly. Fun. I made it, I made my own plugins, started making my own plugins, started making my own themes. And the next thing you know, we're building sites for people, so but it was just as easy as hacking away and things happen and we figured out how to make it work. But now, like, you're not just going to dive in there and start hacking away and figure out how to build a Gutenberg block, like, using React or the core way. Like, you're going to have to actually find some training and documentation on how to do it, and the other challenge is it keeps changing. It's evolving. Gutenberg has gotten pretty stable. But there was a period of time where it wasn't. And every couple of releases, it would break anything that you'd ever done. So it was like, you can't use it for production until it's more stable. And I feel like FSE or whatever we're calling it block themes now, I think, block enabled themes. I don't know. There's a new term, which is also confusing. But again, it's like, okay, is that fully flushed out? Is the next release of WordPress going to change how I do things? So it's like always evolving, but it's evolving so quickly that, again, documentation training is always a thankless job that is playing catch up. And there is a good docs team and a good training team now, but it's tough, especially on the developer side.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. Igor just made a joke. Error, your components might be using a different React version. Oof. And that's, okay. And that's, if everyone, and that's the biggest thing too. Like, it's very frustrating. And that's like, I don't know how we're going to solve that. Right. Like, I wish Courtney Robertson was on here, because she's been working on that with like the, docs team and whatever teams and getting more people involved. But
well, it'll be interesting. There's WordCamp US is coming up. You're going to be there, right? I'm going to be there. A lot of people are going to be there.
I actually booked my hotel and everything already.
Same.
Actually, if anyone wants the tip, the Marriott is actually cheaper than the I got a better deal, and it's a higher rated review than the bank of hotels they got. Where is it? I'm staying at the.
I thought it was a Marriott. The Gaylord place.
I guess I'm staying at the AC Hotel National Harbor, which is like, it's around the corner, but it's like, it's all one big complex. And I saved $150. That was it.
Nice. Yeah. I paid an extra $20 to get a view of the water, apparently. So.
Oh, I didn't do that. I was like, I'm going to go down there.
Anyways, August 24th, a Thursday, that first day is contributor day. So if you are wanting to get into the training teams, the doc teams, figuring out how to contribute to WordPress, learning some of these things we talked about, that's a great opportunity to do it. And they usually, I've seen in the past year or two, they'll put out a post or some details on what to do ahead of contributor day, so you don't spend half the day setting up your environment. So that's also part of that training, because I think if I remember, it was part of like setting up Docker and stuff. So it's always, WordCamps, contributor day aside, like just WordCamps in general are a great way to find those people to talk to learn. So definitely, if you're going to be at WordCamp US, track me and Victor down. I have a feeling we will probably be doing a show somewhere, unofficially, of course. But all we need is a couple mics and our laptop, right? So if you see us in the hallway talking together, guess what?
Yeah, it's not like we're flying, so I can like put everything in a car and just go. Like, I have this whole camera office set up here. I can put the whole thing in the car and just go.
And if they shut us down, it'll make a really good live stream. So, and it's on the Fridays. I'm just saying. I'm not shutting this down. I got a permit. No, it'll be fun. So definitely track us down. Looking forward to seeing everybody. It looks like a more of a traditional WordCamp US. Last year was a little bit lighter for obvious reasons out in San Diego. But this year, just look at the attendee list. It's just a who's who of amazing people.
And they just released new tickets. I got the email, but like, are there still tickets available?
Let's see. There were yesterday. There are about 92 tickets, and I believe this is the last release. So 92 tickets left, or else you're going to get a micro sponsorship. Tickets are $50. Yeah, the micro sponsorship $750. General admission is $50, which is 2 days of the event. I'm assuming that covers contributor day.
Yeah, well, also for anyone who's like $50, I don't know if anyone's listening to this who's not in tech but in WordPress, this is the best deal for any conference on the planet. Yeah, most conferences, like if you type in Twilio Segment, which is a conference, I got comp tickets because like, I work with them as a client. at one of my companies. And the Twilio segment conference, I think it's like $1,000 a ticket. Right. And it probably doesn't have as good as like food and like events. So it's like these, this conference is like on the same level, in my opinion. And it has like such great, like everything there. So for $50, if you could just go there and just drink coffee and hide in a corner if you just want to co-work, and it's worth the $50.
And if anyone complains about the $50, just throw them out, because like you said, it's ridiculous the amount of value you get for $50. Plus you get food and all sorts of stuff, free swag.
Other conferences are $1,000. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. And after the show we had last month, which if you didn't listen to it, was a powerhouse of WordCamp organizers. And we talked about some of the more recent challenges of organizing WordCamps and how the costs have increased. Everything is more expensive. Venues, all these extra safety and sanitary precautions, which of course are necessary, but it's just more money, right? So the fact that a ticket is still $50 in my mind is pretty damn impressive. I wouldn't have been surprised if it gone up to like $100 this year. So good on them for helping keep the cost down. I know some sponsors were directly involved with that, getting more money in so they could get more tickets.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, they wanted to release more tickets, but they needed a few more sponsors, and they were able to get it. It was actually Cloudways is who stepped up to get that sponsorship so they could open up more tickets.
That's awesome.
So the sponsors are helping offset that extra overhead, basically.
Yeah.
So that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, well, let's wrap it up, man. It's summer. I think I'm going to wrap up. It's 5 for the Future Day at WebDevStudios. So what is that? We dedicate the last Friday of every month to contributing back to WordPress core. We talked about how these big media companies, we hope they're going to start contributing. It's open source. The only way WordPress gets better is if we all give back. So don't just take, give. It's my number one tip for open source. You have to get involved and give back. It doesn't mean just writing code. It means help people, talk about WordPress, train people, get people into WordPress, go to an event, do what we're doing right here. This is contributing. If we're talking about WordPress publicly, we're getting people excited about it. You are part of the solution and you are helping grow WordPress and open source. So what else, Victor? Any last words before we wrap it up?
See you at WordCamp US. That's it. That's going to be all.
I can't really. It's
literally so close.
Soon it is. I know. I was just thinking like, oh God, it's like it's like what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? It doesn't feel like August is next week. So summer's flying by, which with the heat out there, I'm not disappointed. I'm ready for fall.
I hope we get a beautiful weather for WordCamp US. It'd be really nice. Because it's going to be August 24th, 27th. It should cool down. It looks like
it's a beautiful area right there on that on the Potomac. My aunt and uncle live right on the other side in Virginia in Asheville, and they have a boat in the marina. So I might see if I can't get a little boat trip for me and some of my good friends like Victor here.
and so that's I'm bringing my girlfriend because I told her I'm like, hey, I'm getting this hotel. I'm going to be in the conference, but you can use the hotel. And there was spas in the area. She's like, she's like, oh, this seems awesome. I was like, yeah, come to some WordPress things. I'm like, but you can go and hang out. Yeah.
I'm bringing my wife's coming in April, so she's making a rare WordCamp appearance, and she is in the industry, but she does not like to nerd out about WordPress. So a lot of people know April. So
listen, I'll be on the boat, but if one of you mentions WordPress, you're going overboard.
I swear to God, if you talk about WordPress outside of that conference, you're getting slapped. She loves it, especially when people come up to us and say, "Oh my gosh, you were who?" And she's like, "Oh God,
I'm gonna go get a drink later."
Yeah, she's like, make his head even bigger." But all right, well, I'm Brad Williams for Victor Ramirez here. Stay cool out there if you're in a hot area. Drink lots of water. Protect those puppies' paws. Those sidewalks are hot, man, hot. You can cook eggs on them in some towns. So be safe out there. It's hot. Hydrate. I need to go drink a bunch more water too. You haven't been drinking any water? I'm like that. You ever see those videos where the thirst monster? I'm the thirst monster.
Highly recommend.
I didn't see you drinking.
This is the best. Before we go, if anyone goes to Wegmans,
what is it?
Ginger seltzer. It's what you never knew you needed. It tastes but it's ginger flavored, which is I don't know if I can get it focused on there.
So is it like a light delicious. Ginger ale?
Very light. No, it's not even like a ginger ale. It's
like it's sat next to a ginger ale and is the essence of ginger ale.
Essence of ginger. It literally tastes like it's essence of ginger ale, but it's so refreshing.
Dude, we're in the golden area of delicious seltzers, and I'm a fan, so I like them all. So we try so many different seltzers. So I'll definitely be on the lookout for that one.
Ginger, highly recommend. All right, later, y'all.
All right, have a happy and safe weekend. We'll see you all at WordCamp US. Bye.
Later.